Hi, my name is Jen. I'm 47 years old and I'm broke. I'm in an overwhelming amount of debt to the point where I even started to consider bankruptcy. However, I know I haven't done everything that I need to do to get my finances in order. And so it's about time that I come to terms with just how bad my financial situation is and do something about it. So I'm going to start with documenting my journey so that I can hopefully in a year from now, 2 years from now, maybe even 3 years from now, look back at where I started to see that I'm actually making or not making progress. So, a question that I ask myself all the time is, how did I even get here? And the truth is, just making really crappy decisions, both relationship wise and financial. So, I feel like I've made a lot of bad decisions in my adult life. I've been able to overcome majority of them on my own and fairly quickly. It it isn't until now that I am at a loss and really struggling. I don't know if that's because I'm older now and I'm more aware of the situation that I'm in and how important it is to be financially stable, but this one hurts. Just over a year ago, I decided to end my marriage with no plan, no savings, no emergency fund, no idea of how I was going to make ends meet going from a dual income to a single income. So this all started in 2018. I was a single mom of three, and although I owned my own house and I had a fairly decent job, I was still struggling a little financially. I was also in a new relationship, and I could admit this now. I was ignoring all sorts of red flags, and we rushed into a marriage that probably should have never happened. However, I was looking at it from a financial point of view, and the help was something that really sounded good to me. Remember when I said I made stupid decisions? Although I cared about this person, I always had a gut feeling that I should not have married him. However, because of the situation I was in and the situation he was in, it felt like the right thing to do. 3 years into our marriage in 2021, we started experiencing issues. Although I knew that our values didn't always align, I pretty much ignored a lot of that. Again, crappy decisions. I started to suspect that he wasn't necessarily faithful or always honest to me. So from that point until the end of our marriage, I always had this unsettling feeling. I was also starting to get very insecure. I was starting to think that maybe I wasn't a good enough wife, or I wasn't pretty enough, and I wasn't thin enough. And I started to think that maybe there was something wrong with me. And I started to overcompensate in those ways. It just led to more problems. At this point, I probably should have realized that this marriage was on a path to not succeed. But since this was my third marriage, I was determined to do whatever it took to make it work. And even though I was willing to do whatever I needed to do, he wasn't really willing to put in any additional or extra effort to do the same. So, what did I do? I decided to sell my house, the one that I owned for about 19 years, so that we could buy a house together. Sold my house, and I used the money from my house to put my half of the down payment on our new house that we bought together. I also used some of the money to pay off the debt that I had at the time, and I put on my rose-colored glasses and just pretended that everything was good and ignored all the issues that we were having. At this time, my oldest daughter had just had a baby who I could not wait to spoil. And my middle daughter had just gone away for her second year at school. I live in Chicago and she was going to college in Florida. So that was a lot to prepare for. And my son was just starting his freshman year in high school. So I had a lot of distractions. I also had a lot of expenses. The financial arrangement that we had was all the household expenses. We split 50-50. He covered majority of the groceries. I covered some. And anything in addition, any like my car or my cell phone or anything that my kids needed was solely my responsibility, which was fine. It worked at the time. The only problem I had was that I never really felt that I could rely on him as a partner to have my back financially. That caused me at times to make some poor financial decisions as far as if something unexpectedly came up, that was either put on a payment plan or put on a credit card. And then I had to figure out how I was going to pay that on my own. I know now that that was another major mistake that I made in this relationship. After we got settled into the new house, I thought things were starting to improve. A little over a year passes, and I started to get that feeling again that things just were not right. I started to feel real insecure in this relationship, and I started to bring it up again. The same thing happened to where I was starting to feel like I was crazy. Well, in September of 2023, it finally came to light that he indeed was having an affair that lasted for about a year. I had always said that infidelity would be the one thing that would end any relationship that I was in, no matter what. Until I found myself in this position. I was so full of embarrassment and shame that I did not know how I was going to admit that I had another failed marriage, let alone the amount of fear that I had regarding the financial impact that this was going to have on me if I ended this relationship. Saying this out loud, even now, still drives me crazy. The fact that I could not walk away from a relationship where I was being disrespected as a person and as a wife because I was so embarrassed and ashamed and afraid. It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy to think that that was what I was thinking at the time. And I know that I am not the only woman that has ever felt that way or will ever feel that way. So instead of facing my fears, I chose to work things out with him. Spoiler alert, they did not work out. Although he said all the right things and made all the right promises, his actions never really matched his words. The ups and downs of everything that was going on had such a huge negative impact on my self-esteem and my self-worth that I barely recognized myself anymore. During this time, I probably should have been saving money, paying off debt, putting more effort into building the side hustle that I had at the time. But instead, the lack of motivation that I had just to do the daily responsibilities that I had to do really held me back. When I say that this affair had a huge impact on me, it really did. It was so crippling that I just could not do anything extra. This lasted about 10 months. Around the 8-month mark, I started to see signs again that things just were not right. Then there was one specific point in time, one instance, one event that happened that was the final straw for me. I didn't even think twice. And when this happened, I told him this relationship was over and there was nothing else that we could do to repair this. I did not even think of how I was going to make things work for myself, but that was a decision that I made. This was in June of 2024. He moved out of the house and then everything became my sole responsibility. And although that was the right decision to make for myself and for this relationship, it was the start of all my financial problems to where I'm at today. So like I said in the beginning, this is going to be a documentation of my journey, my climb back up, the rebuild of my financial situation and of my life. I am going to document everything from June of 2024 until now that has caused me to be in this situation that I'm in, where I was even considering filing for bankruptcy. I'm going to talk about creating a budget, trying to pay off my debt. How much debt do I actually owe? As well as creating multiple income streams to help make this a little bit easier. But the first thing I'm going to need to do is to find out how much money I actually owe and to create a budget. I plan to go into detail on how I'm going to analyze my debt and how I'm going to create a budget that I can actually stick to. I'm going to get really real with myself on what I can eliminate and what I can't. And I also need to start saving money. I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm not even in my 30s. I'm approaching my 50s. And with no savings, that's starting to get a little scary. Why am I sharing this journey now? A year ago, I was so embarrassed and so ashamed and so afraid to even admit to myself what I was going through that it's hard to imagine that I'm actually going to share this with anyone that's willing to listen. Why? Right? Well, my reason why is because I want to be that voice that I wish I had a year ago. Actually, the voice that I wish I had 2 years ago, so that I didn't stay with someone who made me feel less than. I want to show others that are in the same situation that I'm in that you're not alone, then that we can do this together. I want to be able to look back on this and be proud of the person that I was and the person that I became. I don't know exactly where this is going to go, but I do know that I can't go back. That is not an option for me. If you're ready to rebuild with me, subscribe. Let's do this together. And if you just want to follow along for the ride, or you've been in my shoes and you're willing to offer advice, I'd love to have you along for the journey as well. The one thing that I do ask is that you remember that I am human. I make real mistakes and I have real feelings. And I would appreciate that you just respect that in the comments. I can take a little bit of tough love as long as it's coming from a respectful place. One thing I can acknowledge is that the situation that I'm in is no one's fault but my own. Now, do I wish that I was not cheated on and my marriage didn't end? Yes, obviously. Is that my fault? No, but it is my fault that I chose to marry this person and build a life with this person. And it was my fault to ignore all the red flags when they were very, very present. I cannot go back and change the past, but all I can do now is acknowledge my mistakes, learn from them, and rebuild. At this point, it is what it is. I also know that to some, it might be crazy that I'm starting over, but I don't really have a choice. I'm not going to curl up into a ball and pretend that the world is over, because it's not. I'm not dead yet. I still have a lot of life to live, and I'm going to do my best to make it as enjoyable as I possibly can. I'm going to own up to all the mistakes that I've made, all the poor, shitty decisions that I made, and I'm going to move forward. It's only up from here, right? I want to give a shout out to two people in particular here on YouTube that have really given me the courage to be a voice. And that is Elle, Don't Be a Lemon, who I've been following for about a year now. And I see a lot of similarities in some of her habits and how she got to where she is. And I'm hoping that I can have as much success as she has had as far as paying down her debt and being financially free. The other person that I've been following just recently is Rach Reinvented. I see a lot of similarities in her situation as well, and I can relate to a lot of the decisions that she made, as well as the struggles that she's experiencing. And I'm excited to see her journey on, building savings and things like that. And so I want to acknowledge them, because without them, I wouldn't have the courage to be where I'm at now. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you. And I am looking forward to connecting with you more as I move forward in this journey. See you soon.